Hello, my name's Alan, and I'm going to talk a little bit about anxiety and how I've suffered from it, and how hopefully I'm now better. Though I might not be 100%, I'm certainly getting there, and how I managed to do it. Now, I know that I'm Scottish, and obviously, and I talk very quickly, and I can be a little bit difficult to understand, so I'm going to talk as slowly as I can and as clearly as I can, and hopefully that will make it too difficult for everybody to understand what I'm saying. I have a small dog at the back, so hopefully he won't start barking, and it's a little bit windy as well outside, so hopefully that won't add to the noise too much. Right, so what I want to say first is I'm not asking for any money from anybody. I don't want anything like that. I'm just going to tell you a little bit how I got better, how I managed to figure out how I could beat anxiety, and hopefully that will work for other people. Everyone has different anxiety levels, different triggers, different background, different causes, I think, to some extent. Some people have had horrible childhoods, maybe. Some people have maybe had nothing go wrong in their life. Like myself, I've had a great life, but that doesn't make it any easier to understand when anxiety or depression to a certain extent hits you, that you can't really understand why it's there. But anyway, what happened to me was almost a year ago. I started to get very bad insomnia, and I couldn't sleep, and I started to panic about not sleeping. I was only sleeping sometimes for a couple of hours. I spent all day thinking about sleeping. My mind started to go into overdrive. All I thought about was myself. I was very worried, very worried. It was affecting my personality. I was having mood swings. I felt that I was constantly on edge. I was crying. I was freaking out. I didn't know what was going on. I'm self-employed, so thankfully I managed to keep my job. I never missed a day's work, though I work on my own, so it didn't really affect other people in that way. But obviously my family, it made it difficult for them. And I couldn't explain why it was happening. I went to see the doctor, and I've been given various pills, but I never really felt they were making much of a difference. I went to see a hypnotherapist, which I think helped to get some issues out from my past, but I was still feeling much the same, and I was still having the problem with sleeping. I saw a psychotherapist and did some CBT, which I think helped to some extent, and it definitely has its place. But with the type of anxiety I had, I didn't feel that I was worrying about specific things. I was just worrying about worrying, which I know sounds kind of crazy, but that's what it felt like. It wasn't like I was worrying about my job or my family or my life or midlife crisis or any of these things. I just couldn't explain why I felt so on edge all the time, and what I could do just to go back to feeling normal again. Eventually, I became convinced that there was some sort of imbalance somewhere. I didn't want to feel like this. It wasn't deliberate. I didn't want attention. So I went through that thinking maybe, I'm attention seeking. I couldn't understand why it was there. I have no reason to feel so wound up and so terrible. So I felt there was either a physical or a chemical imbalance somewhere. And because physically I could feel things at times. I could feel, the back of my head, the top of my shoulders. I could feel shooting sensations, kind of like maybe like adrenaline, something like that, but I never really explained what it was. But I was determined that there must be a cause for it. Now, eventually, what we figured out was that when I had the Chinese meal for the second time, my wife realised that the first kind of panic attack, stress attack I'd had for ages was after I'd had the Chinese meal a few hours later. And reading up a little bit on that and what could be in the food perhaps led me to read up about MSG, monosodium glutamate, and then to discover that there was actually a syndrome in America called Chinese restaurant syndrome, which is people talking about MSG, and quite often it gives migraines, is the anecdotal thing that most people say, but it does have other symptoms. Some people feel really sick. So I pursued that as a theory, and read more about MSG. Eventually discovered there's a doctor called, a retired neurosurgeon called Dr. Russell Blaylock, who's written a lot about MSG, aspartame, or aspartame if you like, kind of NutraSweet, sulfamin K, all these, anything that's got, if it's a diet food or a diet drink will have some of it in it. Most crisps, or chips as the Americans would say, have monosodium glutamate in them. Anything with a flavouring. And there's a very good, what I'll do is I'll put a few links to websites at the bottom of this, so you can read a lot of it yourself. There's a website called truthandlabeling.org, I think it is. And the guy that runs that is probably the most MSG sensitive person in the world, and he collapses for I think about 3 or 4 hours generally, whenever he has anything with even the slightest trace of MSG in it. So he's put a list on his website of things that he thinks contain MSG, and there's a lot of things that I say they're MSG free, but when he's actually looked at them, they're not, as far as he's concerned. So anyway, there's this book, tells you a lot, Excitotoxins by Dr. Blaylock, retired neurosurgeon. But there's a lot of stuff on the internet for free. You don't have to buy the books. You can get this as an audio book as well, which I did. But you can read a lot of stuff for free on the internet. And whether you think I'm talking rubbish or not, that's fine. That's no problem. But the least you can do is educate yourself and start thinking about what you're putting into your body. Now, his theory, and I won't go into a lot of the science because I can kind of understand it, but I'm not a neurosurgeon and I'm not a scientist, that basically what's happening is the rubbish that's in the food is burning out your brain cells, and it's breaking down the blood-brain barrier in your brain. So when you have doses of this, it affects you more and more, and it affects different people in different ways. Their theory is that this is also at the root of a lot of things like autism, Alzheimer's, and various other neurological conditions which have been far more prevalent in the last few years. So you can look that up yourself, but it's really saying that your brain's just become so sensitive to it that you need to either cut it out completely or really, really cut down on it. So what I've had to do is change my diet completely, and I have to go through this list I found on the website, and I'm trying to avoid everything with MSG directly in it. Anything that says something extract, like yeast extract, anything that says modified on the labels, anything that says hydrated, rehydrated, refined, all your fizzy juice, your soda if you're American, sweets with lots of glucose, any of these things that could be stimulating your brain where it's really just run out of control. And it's very difficult. I won't kid you, when you look at the labels, there's so much on it. There's things like natural flavourings. If you read about natural flavourings, they don't even tell you what they are. The companies are allowed to just call it natural flavouring, and you don't know what's in it, which just makes things hard to avoid. So you really need to stop eating processed food as much as you possibly can. Eat fruit and vegetables, cut things up, make things from scratch. It doesn't mean you can't eat the things you like. It just means that you need to stop buying them pre-made in packets. You need to start making them yourself. If you want macaroni cheese, you have to get the pasta and the cheese and make the sauce, and it's a lot better anyway, to be honest, but you need to make that effort. But consider the hell that you're probably going through in your head, hopefully it would be worthwhile to you. So that's what I've been doing, and I've done it for about a month. I feel a lot better. I feel so much better. My brain has just calmed down completely. You know, it feels like I've been on drugs, and all I've been doing is eating and drinking like anybody else. I've cut down on caffeine. I don't drink coffee anyway, but I drink a little bit of tea. I've stopped drinking. I mostly drink milk or nice teas now, you know, like green tea, water, more natural things. And I've really cut down on the alcohol. I'm having very little alcohol now. But really, I would suggest you give this a try. It certainly worked for me. And the more you read about it, you feel like a conspiracy theorist, you know. I mean, I'm not saying 9/11 was an inside job, or there's aliens or any of that kind of stuff, but you've really got to think about what's there. I mean, when you read about aspartame and find out that it was Donald Rumsfeld that was the man that put aspartame in food as one of the first acts of the Reagan administration, that makes you wonder. I don't think he's a man you would necessarily trust to be putting things in your food, would you? Well, no matter what your politics are, I wouldn't think he's not someone I would have doing that. You know, I can't say this will cure you for definite. You know, all I can say is that this has worked for me, and it's simple, and it seems overly simple at times. That how come this hasn't been suggested before? But you know, there's a lot of interest, a lot of commercial interest in you buying packaged food, you know, and buying everything cheaply. And you know, I'm not saying you have to go completely organic, you know, and maybe be vegan, and some people have done that and it's worked for them. I found I haven't had to go to that extreme, but perhaps my sensitivity isn't as bad as other people. But all I can suggest is you try it. You know, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm just someone who's recovering from this period, and I know other people have had this for like 30, 40 years, you know, so something's got to be worth a try. If you do have success, if you want to reply to this, that would be great. I'm quite happy to speak to people by email. Just let me know. You know, if it doesn't work for you, you know, try something else. But this doesn't involve any drugs, doesn't involve any money. It just involves willpower and reading an awful lot of labels. But I wish you good luck anyway. Okay?